I'm going to go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Seema Chiodo. I'm the National Channel Director with Mosaic Network. With me today, I have Matt Hiles, our COO and one of the founders of our company. Comes from a long-standing, sorry, I lost my words here today. Long-standing history in the technology space, and he will be quarterbacking this webinar with me. I'd like to also introduce Bill Fanning, one of the newest members of our team. He's our senior solutions architect, comes from the enterprise part of the business, has been in technology and engineering for over 20 years. You can see some of the companies that he's worked for, comes from, and has some great certifications in the Cisco area. We're really excited to have Bill joining today on our webinar. And then we have Justin Wilson, who is the head of our technology and engineering, comes from a long-standing history in IT leadership and security and technology. You can see some of the companies that he's worked for, Slack, Lookout, and Deloitte, most recently at Brew Labs, and joined our team last year when we acquired Brew Labs, and comes with a breadth of knowledge. Excited to have Justin presenting today on the technology as well. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Matt.
Thanks, Seema. With Bill and Justin here, there's not a whole lot of work for me to do, but glad to be here. Glad everyone's joining. I'm Matt Hiles. I'm the COO at Mosaic Networks. As Seema said, this is part of our X Factor series. It's designed to be a grab and go, 20 minutes, get some impactful information that you can take back out to the marketplace with your clients. This is all partner-centric information that we're going to be sharing today. And this is really a great one because we're going to be talking about different SD-WAN technologies, not only the differences, but then, the important part is how do you get that deployed into the customer's environment? So we're going to have a 3-up comparison here, and Bill and Justin will be our thought leaders on that part of it. I'm going to take us through a quick history of the company's evolution. I think many of the folks who are here have worked with us and know about us, but those who are new, I want to tell you that we've been around for 14 years. We were founded in 2007 as a non-facility-based carrier, today known more affectionately as a network aggregator. We've got several hundred wholesale buying agreements with carriers all over the world. I think we do this business as good, if not better, than anybody else in the business. So I think for network aggregation projects, we should definitely be on your short list. We were also early adopters of SD-WAN technology, and in 2015 we selected VeloCloud and did our first VeloCloud deployment in 2016, and have done countless deployments throughout North America and globally since then. And then, as Seema referenced, we acquired an MSSP out of the Bay Area last year, and that really helped us quick start our cybersecurity and pro services practice. And when we take all that and we kind of stack it into what we call our triad of IT strategic services, the foundation being global network aggregation. Again, we do this globally today. We've got customers throughout the world. And then overlaying on top of that network infrastructure, we deliver 3 flavors of SD-WAN as a service, fully managed with VeloCloud, Cato Networks, and Meraki. And again, Bill and Justin are going to get into the details of those. And then fully managed cybersecurity and pro services for complex integrations. And then, of course, the important part of that is how do you get it out to the client? And we do that in a highly orchestrated single vendor solution. So let's talk about what Bill and Justin are going to talk about, the three sort of critical questions. What is the right SD-WAN technology for your client? And how do you know? What are the differences? Which SD-WAN technology best supports remote workforce? Hot topic right now, right? And it's going to remain a hot topic regardless of the pandemic. I think we've fundamentally shifted in that regard. And then which SD-WAN vendor best enhances a client security posture? That's an important one as well. Increasing focus on security, cybersecurity. So with that, I'll turn it over to the guys who are positioned to answer these questions, Justin and Bill.
Thanks, Matt. So just kind of diving right into it, we're going to focus on a few core areas such as network and security and so forth, as Matt mentioned. This is kind of at a high level some of the capabilities, the networking capabilities across the features. And this is by no means intended to be exhaustive. There's a lot to read between the lines on these and capabilities that just don't fit on this table. But at a high level, some of the core things that you would expect from SD-WAN are listed on the left there, looking at things like multipath capabilities and so forth. And those are somewhat table stakes for VMware and Cato versus like a Meraki, which doesn't support it to the same extent. They have other capabilities such as load balancing and so forth, but and you can force traffic down a particular path, but it's not the same level of automation that you get with VMware and Cato. And VMware and Cato actually even do those in different manners to some extent. So looking at VeloCloud, they tout their dynamic multipath optimization or DMPO quite heavily, and they form tunnels back to their gateways, which are placed all over the globe and so forth, versus Cato, which Bill can elaborate on a little bit more. They employ a POP model, which is similar but different.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. The Cato system revolves heavily around doing everything in their Cato cloud. So we'll get into the reference architecture down the road in the slide deck here. But the Cato cloud, it converges all the networking and security functionality. So all of that multipathing is reliant on Cato's cloud, and the links are aggregated, and the multipathing takes place there in the cloud. Whereas you have Meraki, there is no concept of gateway or POP type of architecture. It's just device to device, either fully meshed or hub and spoke type of architecture.
Yeah. Thanks. And all of these solutions all have capabilities for things like employing quality of service and engineering the traffic, and obviously a centralized managed, which is a core tenet of any SD-WAN platform, especially a cloud-first SD-WAN platform. So all these, all VMware, Cato, Meraki, there's all an orchestration function that's hosted by each of these vendors individually that serve as that core management console. So the takeaways here that they're all fairly equal. Meraki tends to be more of a DIY solution in that sense from a networking standpoint, but they all share a lot of the same capabilities at the networking level. And often Meraki's thought of as managed LAN, but they've come a long way on the SD-WAN front, and they've added a lot of the key capabilities there. So, Bill, do you want to walk us through some of the security?
Yeah, and yep. So as we get into a lot of security capabilities, this topic comes up a lot with our customers on what security features are built into SD-WAN platforms. You can see by this chart right here, there's a big difference from the network capabilities within security. Each one of the platforms, VeloCloud, Cato, and Meraki, they do offer a built-in firewall or some firewall functionality, but Justin and I always talk about we don't sell VeloCloud as a security device at all. It has a very basic firewall built in, but it's nothing in comparison to the security, the native security that's built into the other two platforms.
So, Bill, it's really not a next gen firewall. It's just a open closed ports, shields up to the outside world.
Yep, just allow or block, very basic rules you can put in there. So there's nothing next gen about it natively.
Whereas Cato has the full next gen capability natively into it, and Meraki is depending on the license that's deployed, and we'll talk about licensing in a little bit here, but depending on the license that's deployed, sits somewhere in between there or in line with Cato.
Yep, and with Cato, that's where a lot of the value of the solution comes from. Customers are looking for reduced footprint, looking to maybe part ways with their firewall, especially when it comes up to like equipment refresh cycles, and they want to have a network and a security footprint that's consolidated in one, and that's where Cato really shows a lot of value. Their next gen features include the IPS, IDS capabilities, and really their threat protection package, which includes URL and content filtering and a lot of anti-malware protections that are built in, which compared to VeloCloud, there's really just no alternative. There's no comparison, should I say.
So VeloCloud really sits in line with if there's an existing security infrastructure that's going to be maintained, or you're going to leverage third-party integrations such as Zscaler or Symantec content filtering and so forth, or a virtual network firewall like a Palo Alto or Fortinet that you can deploy on the same hardware as the VeloCloud. Yeah,
so the VNF functionality is nice within the VeloCloud offering, but it is it still is an integration with a third party where there's no need for that within Meraki or Cato, because the security is built in either through licensing with Meraki or just built in natively with Cato. So there's not a need for a CSS integration or a VNF functionality there.
Okay. And it's important to note that with the VNFs on VeloCloud, and well, you can deploy the Palo Alto or Fortinet or Checkpoint firewall on the same hardware as the VeloCloud. They're still two separate panes of glass. They're not deeply integrated. So you're effectively managing two boxes that just may be virtualized.
Yeah, and maybe the biggest difference right now with a lot of the work from home conversations is the lack of VPN client capability with VeloCloud, where Cato, that they offer what's called the Cato client, which is a VPN client that connects users into the cloud. They also have a clientless VPN client that is actually a browser-based portal where users can log in and get access to applications that are protected by the Cato cloud. And Meraki offers their VPN client. They also have now added support for Cisco AnyConnect as well.
That's interesting. And so on the Cato solution, the clientless VPN connectivity is really application specific. It's not giving blanket access to the network.
That's correct.
Yeah. Versus like VeloCloud doesn't have an option there natively into it, but Meraki with their client VPN, it is a traditional VPN client. It's going to provide blanket access to the network. Obviously, you can establish ACLs and other rules on the network to limit access, but it's effectively putting that client on the network regardless of where they're at in the world. Okay. Great. Matt, why don't we go ahead and move ahead?
Sure. And we've got a couple of questions coming in. I want everyone to know we'll get those questions answered for you at the end.
Bill, do you want to walk us through some of the reference architectures with VeloCloud?
Yeah, so here we have VeloCloud's basic architecture. There's a couple things to take away from this slide. So there's at the top of the diagram there's the VeloCloud orchestrator. So that's where all the policy and configuration and all the management of the overall WAN takes place. Then there is a on-premise component there, that edge device to the left there, that white box, which is the VeloCloud Edge that can sit at a branch sit at a data center. And then in the internet cloud, there you see those small blue clouds, which are known as the VeloCloud gateways. And those are the VeloCloud points of presence that are in all the major data centers, at all the doorsteps of all the big cloud providers across the globe. And that is the architecture that allows for the multipathing and all the DMPO optimizations that happen within the VeloCloud architecture. So you have the orchestrator, you have the gateways, you also have the edge devices. So the devices have physical form factors and they have support for virtual, whether that's ESXi or that is in cloud offerings like Azure and AWS. And then, go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt. So it's also important to note on the gateways, there's thousands of them distributed across the globe. They often are in the same data centers that common SaaS applications are deployed in. So a lot of Equinix data centers and so on. What that provides is from the branch, it's going to that branch is going to form a dynamic encrypted tunnel to those gateways, to multiple gateways at a time. And so it's going to add in an additional layer of security for accessing applications, but it's also going to provide a quick access to those SaaS applications. So it's dropping on the doorstep of those common SaaS applications like Salesforce and Office 365 and others, often within sub 5 milliseconds from branch to access those applications.
Yep, and that's where you're going to see the user experience get a lot better from an application standpoint.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's also important to note that those branch edges, as Bill mentioned, can be deployed virtually on premise. They don't have to be a physical appliance. They can be deployed within the customer's existing virtual environment.
And Justin, is that true just for VeloCloud, or are we referring to all three platforms?
So it's actually for Meraki, there is no virtual option on premise. It's all physical hardware. However, in AWS and Azure, you can deploy a virtual Meraki MX appliance,
Yep.
and you can treat that cloud environment as another site on your network.
Yep, and at this point with Cato, the only two virtual options right now supported for cloud virtual would be Microsoft Azure and AWS. It can also run within ESXi within a private cloud in someone's data center.
And one other thing to note, and we'll get into this as we go through a couple more of the reference architectures, but there's with the VeloCloud platform, you can basically scale the number of circuits, internet circuits, into the device horizontally, so you can continue to add circuits to the device depending on how many ports, or if it's a virtual appliance, what the capabilities are of your platform. So you're not limited to just one or two circuits, or one or two circuits plus a 4G connection. Versus like a Meraki platform, you can only hook up a maximum of 2 internet circuits plus 4G. If a 4G dongle is supported, but a maximum of 2 internet circuits to their MX appliances.
Yep.
And Bill, do you want to speak to Cato in the same light?
Yeah, sure. Matt, if you want to go to the next slide here. As you can see, the Cato's reference architecture is a bit more expansive, and right there in the center is that green ring, which is depicting Cato's cloud. And their whole solution revolves around all of the functionality done within the cloud. As I was speaking to before, they have a physical on-premise device, which they refer to as a socket. And there's 2 particular models. There's an X1500, which is meant for the branch, and there's an X1700 that's meant for a data center. That's a little bit more throughput. But the purpose of those sockets is strictly to form tunnels to the Cato cloud, where all of the networking and all the security functionality is handled. And that is a little bit different from the other platforms, where the VeloCloud Edge does have some local capabilities as far as routing and some services that can run. With Cato, everything is done exclusively in the cloud. And you can see all the WAN optimizations, all of the next generation security features, it's all done throughout the cloud. There's also a VPN component there in the bottom right for mobile users, and that clientless SDP, which is they refer to as the software defined perimeter. And again, there's connections that can be made from the POPs directly to the clouds. AWS and Azure is depicted here. So again, the value of Cato and the reference architecture is that the footprint at the branch or at the on-prem location can be small. You're essentially putting, quote unquote, a dumb box that has some throughput capabilities at a site, and those can form active tunnels, resilient tunnels to the Cato cloud, and all of that functionality, security, and networking is done within Cato's cloud.
And how many POPs does Cato have across the globe?
Cato has got right now roughly 80. And the cool thing with Cato is that if there's a use case and they have a customer that is in some sort of remote area that they need better application performance, we can put in a request and they will actively look to build a POP in that location. And that's how some of their POPs actually came on the scene. And they're continuing to expand and grow POPs rapidly as more of these requests come in.
And I think one of the key differences between Cato and like a VeloCloud, between the VeloCloud gateways and the Cato POPs is VeloCloud between their gateways, they're running the public internet versus the POPs, correct me if I'm wrong here, Bill, the POPs are mirrors of each other, and you have this global private backbone that's interconnecting all those POPs.
Yep. No, great point. Yeah, all of the 80 Cato POPs are all mirrored, identical mirrors of each other, and they're all interconnected by tier 1 carriers. So they have built a pretty bulletproof backbone to support their customer base.
And I think one of the other things with to note on the VeloCloud front is each edge at that's deployed at a branch or data center connects back to 2 gateways at a time for resiliency, versus a Cato deployment model. And I'm not saying it's better or worse or anything like that. The sockets are connecting back to multiple POPs at a time, but if a single POP fails, or goes down entirely, the failover is completely graceful since they're all mirrors of each other. And VeloCloud has some of those same capabilities. They're not all, their gateways aren't all mirrors of each other. If a gateway goes down, since you have multiple connections to different gateways, it'll form a connection to a new gateway automatically. But since VeloCloud's not doing all the security and routing and so forth in the cloud, VeloCloud's able to handle it at the branch level.
Yep.
Why don't we move on to Meraki?
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Great differentiators here.
So Meraki is definitely a simpler environment. They don't have the concept of POPs or gateways. It's 100%, as Bill mentioned earlier, branch to branch or hub and spoke or full mesh. The default out of the box is full mesh, but you can enable hub and spoke. There is no optimizations that are happening in the cloud from a traffic perspective or performance perspective. And since though it's not doing true dynamic multipath, it's load balancing, or you can create policies to route traffic over a particular link and so forth and provide failover. There's no need on their side from a cloud component other than the management console, which lives in the Meraki data centers.
Yeah, so customers, that are looking for active circuits, Meraki is just that one platform that's not going to meet that requirement. There's 2 WAN ports on all the MX appliances, but it's only an active passive.
Yeah. And I know Meraki's roadmap is pretty aggressive, and they've got a lot of things that are moved more into the SD-WAN space from an application performance and visibility standpoint. That's all on their roadmap. They've recently introduced an additional license, which we can touch on in a moment. But they introduced this SD-WAN appliance, which starts to move it in the direction of a Cato and a VeloCloud from a full performance management, dynamic multipathing, active-active, but it's not something that's available today, and it is on their roadmap. It's just not 100% clear on when they're going to deliver on all those capabilities to put it fully on par with Cato or VeloCloud in that sense. So when you're looking at Meraki, it's you have to understand what the capabilities are and what the limitations are as well. It's a great SD-WAN and security platform, but there are some limitations if active-active is a requirement. Okay, why don't we move ahead? So looking at the license differences between the three platforms, and this is, again, definitely simplifying the license concepts, because within each one of these platforms, there's multiple license tiers and options and so forth that enable various capabilities. At a high level, looking at how they're licensed from a throughput standpoint, VMware and Cato have different tiers for different throughputs and so forth for those licenses, regardless of the hardware that's underlying. Whereas Meraki, their hardware is the limiting factor, and the licenses are hardware specific or device specific. Meraki, for example, has devices that support maximum throughput of 250 megabits per second, all the way up through 6 gigs per second at the high end. And then looking at security capabilities, as we mentioned, VeloCloud, it's all add-ons through third parties. You can't really buy a security solution through VeloCloud directly. You'd have to go to those third-party vendors and add on security capabilities. Cato obviously has security capabilities built into it. They're licensed on an a la carte fashion, so you can buy just the SD-WAN capabilities without the security capabilities, or you can pick and choose which security capabilities you'd like. And then you get into Meraki. Meraki has 3 different license tiers that have different capabilities on the MX side of things. One is their enterprise license. It covers site-to-site connectivity and things like that, with no real security capabilities other than that stateful firewall and the ability to open and close ports. Then you can move into their advanced security license and their newest SD-WAN license and so forth, which adds on things like IDS and IPS and content filtering and things like that as well. And then, oh, go ahead, Bill. Do you want to add on to it?
I'm just going to continue on as far as the gateways and the POP access. With VeloCloud, depending on the tier of license that you get access to the gateways, where with Cato, that's just built into their licensing model. With Meraki, there's a lack of that concept altogether, so it's just not applicable. And then going into the license terms here, VeloCloud and Cato have pretty standard, 1 to 5 or year, where Cato is really 1 to 3. But Meraki offers all the way up to a 10-year license model with optional co-termination. Coterminous licensing agreements is built in with Cato's solution, but not with VMware's.
Yep. And we could probably do a whole webinar just on Meraki's co-termination or versus device specific, because it's actually pretty complicated how they handle those licenses. Yeah, we could spend a lot of time on that. So there's a lot of information there.
And we're happy to do so. If anyone has a particular client that wants to do a whiteboarding or deeper discovery on any of these platforms or all of the above, happy to schedule that call.
Okay, why don't we move on? Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end here, and I apologize, we're running a little over, but I think one of the key things here, and Matt, maybe you can talk to this a little bit as well, but we think that SD-WAN, regardless of which platform we talked about, is better with Mosaic for some of the reasons outlined here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the DIY model just is not very suitable or supportable or even desirable. I mean, the folks that we talk to are just looking to move this, out of their organizations and into companies that, specialize in managing SD-WAN. So we take that and add the additional layer of network services as a global carrier aggregator, we've got the Cisco powered, CCIE powered professional services for complex integrations. That's a big deal. The SD-WAN guys have gone a long ways to talking about zero touch, and it's just not. And if you've tried to deploy this in a zero touch manner, then you already know that there's going to be a lot of frustration that comes along with that. So having the skilled engineering resources to make that deployment happen in a flawless and very transparent manner is a big deal. And then, we've got our own NOC support and also SOC. We haven't talked about security from a SOC perspective, but we have all that in-house, onshore for, the best customer experience. Anything you'd want to add to that, Bill or Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I can add from just a personal standpoint to back that up. Before coming to Mosaic, when I was on the customer side, I thought it was in the best interest of where I used to work that, I had a team of 5 highly skilled engineers, and we were on our SD-WAN journey, and we decided to do it ourselves. And we quickly found out that that was a regrettable decision because even though I had a strong networking team, there's just a lot of caveats, a lot of learning curve with SD-WAN and the functionality. It is not the same as a traditional router. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have gone with a managed SD-WAN solution like Mosaic offers. So just for what it's worth.
I think an important part that we didn't talk about here, and we are going to conclude, is the white glove implementation. We've got a team of professional project management folks that do all of this stuff that enables us to deliver world-class customer experience. And customer experience equates to partner experience. And so we have, an audience of partners here today that we know that both customer experience is important for you in your relationship with your clients, but equally as important is, how does that provider treat you? And there's a direct correlation between customer experience and partner experience. We're acutely aware of that interrelationship, and we seek to deliver on that every day. So I'm having a little problem with my pointer here, but trying to get to the last slide. And there it is. So just as a wrap, and thanks for those who stuck around till the end. I think we've got a couple of questions and we may have answered those. The point here is why Mosaic Networks? I think from our perspective, the answer is pretty simple. We're delivering all of this in a highly orchestrated single vendor solution across those 3 critical strategic IT services: global network aggregation, fully managed SD-WAN as a service across the 3 platforms that Bill and Justin talked about today, along with an innovative security portfolio and pro services for complex integrations. I think you have to have all of those pieces if you're going to your customer and talking about WAN modernization. If you don't have all of those pieces, then someone else who does is going to come in and potentially take that deal. So we're here to enable our partners to come to the table with their clients with options for SD-WAN that are best suited for their WAN modernization initiative. We'll do the discovery with them and determine which is the right platform, and then deliver it in a fully managed solution with carrier services and security as needed. And I think with that, Seema, we'll hand it back to you for closing. And you might be on mute.
I'm on mute. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody for joining. We did have a couple questions in the chat box if folks want to stick around. we will be answering them live. And for those of you that need to log off, feel free to do so. We will be getting this recording out to everybody along with the presentation, so you'll have that to reference. And as always, feel free to email us at channel@mosaicnetworks.com if you have any further questions. So the first question here, Bill and Justin can help us answer. Are they all premise-based hardware software solutions that were discussed today?
Yeah, so it's a mix. I think we touched on that a little bit earlier, and I think this question came in before that. But so you have options to deploy all of these with hardware-based solutions. VeloCloud and Cato offer virtual solutions for ESXi from VMware, whereas Meraki does not. But all of them can be deployed within common environments like AWS, Azure, and so forth virtually.
Yep, and we have an appendix slide at the end of this deck too. I think that will be sent out to everybody. That kind of gives a comparison of what cloud providers that could be run in. But yeah, all of them have physical hardware that can be deployed, and then there's some support for virtual in all cases.
Great. The next question we have is, what is the general cost difference between the solutions?
It's a great question. At a high level, you're going to have something like Cato, which is going to cost a little bit more because you have that global backbone that's interconnecting all their POPs and so forth and whatnot. But versus like a VeloCloud, which they have their gateways and so forth, but they're not doing the same level of integration between their gateways and so forth as Cato is. So Matt, keep me honest here from a sales standpoint. I think VeloCloud tends to be a little more cost effective than Cato, but they're not far off from either one of them.
Yep, you're honest.
Okay, and then you have Meraki, which is somewhere in the middle of all that. Just depends on the size of the hardware, the license purchased, and so forth. And again, the feature sets are identical across all three of them. So really want to work with customers to identify what's the best solution for them out of those.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Justin. So another question that came in, can you use Meraki switches and APs with VeloCloud or Cato on the LAN side?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do it all the time with customers. In fact, we do it internally as well. Bill, maybe you have some thoughts on this as well, but I think that Meraki, even if you're using the Meraki MX firewalls in an enterprise license standpoint, or even with an advanced security license with VeloCloud, or potentially even with Cato, they actually can be complementary in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I think the MX appliance really pairs well with the VeloCloud Edge, with having the VeloCloud Edge, take care of the edge networking functionality while getting all the security benefits of the MX appliance. And we actually recommend, if to run the Meraki on the back end is with the wireless and with the switching. Yep. And that's what we recommend to our customers as well.
Great, thanks guys. And our last question, doesn't Cato offer their own SOC and circuit management capabilities?
They do. They're an add-on cost or license that you can buy from Cato. And they do compete with some of our internal offerings from a Mosaic perspective, but we actually don't see them as a competitor because they don't do the same things that we do. And we actually think that we offer a more comprehensive solution on the circuit and carrier management side of things, as well as the managed SOC. I think one of the key takeaways for the managed SOC offering that Cato offers is that it's very focused on their solution. They're not venturing into the rest of your LAN and applications and network and devices and so forth. They kind of stop at the end of their environment. Similarly with the circuit management, they'll open tickets and so forth and alert you, or excuse me, they'll alert you when the circuit's down and whatnot, but actually opening and closing tickets and triaging complex issues with circuits across the environment, whether it be SD-WAN, LAN, remote users, and so forth. That's where our NOC really shines, and our carrier management capabilities. We're not just solely focused on SD-WAN. We can look at the entire environment if the customer wants us to.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for answering all those questions. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close out our webinar for today. Thanks everybody for joining, and look forward to an email talking about our next upcoming X Factor series webinar. Thanks everyone.